Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Mastering Personal Change. This is T. Falcon Napier. I am the founder of the Institute for Productive Tension, and I'm going to be your instructor for this four-session series. This program is something that we invite all members of the ChangeWorks community to participate in. So this kind of consider this as being like your core training in the principles of tension management. Our focus is going to be on how it applies to you personally. And then many of you are already on the track for becoming a certified ChangeWorks professional, a practitioner, a master practitioner. This program is also an important part of your training going towards that too. We'll talk about that in a few moments in more detail. For those of you who don't know me, a little bit of background on me. We are based in Davidson, North Carolina, a college town just north of Charlotte. We've been in business for some 32 years now. I started out as a independent trainer, and I would go and offer different corporate training programs to clients all around the world. I've spent over 25,000 hours in front of audiences delivering presentations on sales and leadership and change management. And we've come to be known around the world for our intellectual property, three names in particular: MasterStream, which is a sales program all about influencing skills; ChangeWorks, which is the program you guys are touching your toe into. This is a program all about personal and professional change management; and Pride-Based Leadership, obviously a program about leadership. So how can we help people to get the most out of their people by applying these principles of tension management? We've worked with over 400 clients around the world over all these years. In fact, over 100 programs for IBM alone in the past few years. Combined audience, over 1 million people. I stopped counting after the million. What's really near and dear to us, though, now is our community. So we've now built a community of some 500, what we call ChangeWorks practitioners around the world. 300 plus of them have become independent professionals who use the ChangeWorks system and teach tension management and MasterStream and Pride-Based Leadership and ChangeWorks to their clients all around the world. So if you'd like to learn anything about that, you can find lots of information on the website, and you can certainly give us a call. Uh, Before we launch into the real meat of the program, let's just give you a little shape of what's to come. The four sessions we're going to be covering are titled, number one, the nature of change, where we're going to explore how these concepts of tension management affect change at the personal level. We're going to, later on this afternoon, do session two, understanding productive tension. So you're actually going to go online. You're actually going to use the ChangeWorks system to create your own ChangeWorks profile, and you're going to do your little assessment so that you can really understand what's going on with your level of tension. In session three, this coming Friday, we'll be teaching you how to explore your personal tension. How do you interpret what's going on with your level of productive tension right now, and what can you do to determine a better place for you to be on the change grid? And ultimately, session four, next Friday or this coming Friday afternoon, how do you go about managing your personal tension so that you can turn more of your dreams into reality? Fulfill more of your missions, etc. We do record all the sessions, and they're available within 48 hours, usually not even that long. And in just a moment, I'll show you where you can get to those recordings. This program also serves, though, as the prerequisite coursework for professionals who are pursuing the ChangeWorks practitioner designation. So for those of you who are working with clients and plan to use the ChangeGrid in that work with your clients, you are pursuing the ChangeWorks practitioner designation. So after you finish mastering personal change, you would move on to ChangeWorks Essentials. And it doesn't make sense to go to ChangeWorks Essentials until you've done this program, so that you have all this base knowledge before you get into how it applies to other people. We're talking about how is change affecting you, and how ready are you to actually handle that change. So it'll be a little bit different. So we all start with the same question, though. Everyone gets ready to answer a few of these, so I know you're participating. Are humans by nature resistant to change? Well, of course, we've all heard this all of our lives, and so we've all come to believe it. But if you really stop for a second and just examine this, you'll find it isn't really true. So, in fact, we can lock it in with this little phrase: a long habit of not thinking a thing wrong gives it the superficial appearance of being right. So we've heard that people are resistant to change for so long. We all just kind of accept that as being some sort of universal truth about human behavior. But we don't have to look very far beyond that belief to find plenty of evidence to the contrary. If you were by nature resistant to change, then you, as an individual human being, you would not have gone to school or dated or gotten a job. You wouldn't go to college. You wouldn't do any of the things that you see on here. Have kids, change careers, get a new hairstyle, move to a different city. You see lots of examples here of changes that you not only don't resist making, but you probably devoted a tremendous amount of your time and your energy and your resources to making those kinds of changes happen. So, this belief that people are by nature resistant to change simply isn't true. It is true that all of us are resistant. We do have an ability to push back, but we're not pushing back just because it's a change. Some changes, instead of pushing against, we actually pull toward us. Some changes, we're actually the ones that are the grand advocates of it. We want to make these kinds of changes happen. So the thought that we're by nature resistant to change is really hogwash. Now, let's take a look at it a bit more detail. Change is the central activity of the human experience. And what I mean by that is that every single moment of every single day, we are all actively involved in this change process. The change process has three steps to it. Step number one, we look at the world around us to determine if we're four things. Those four things are we safe, secure, happy, and healthy? Now, again, this is a very primal kind of a process. We don't make a conscious decision to run the change process. It's always happening. It's part and parcel. It's part of the fabric of how we operate as biological critters. We are programmed at a very deep level to constantly look at the world around us, to gather whatever information is available to us to determine if we are physically safe. So if we hear a twig snap in the background and we don't know what that means, this heightens our awareness because it puts a question mark about, are we actually safe? And so we're evaluating this situation. Is there a threat in my immediate environment? Once I know that I'm safe, my next priority becomes, am I secure? So we need to save nuts for the winter and things like that. So am I gathering up resources that help me for today and will help me for tomorrow and for a lot of tomorrows yet to come? So, am I building this feeling of security around me? If I, once I feel both safe and secure, well, now I move on to putting some energy into being happy. What brings me joy? What do I really, enjoy being around? So, what's going to give me some sort of, beauty? So, what's something that just brings me that feeling that we seem to label as being happy? And then this last one is healthy. So we also want to look at the world around us to find out, are we actually healthy? Is something going on that's jeopardizing our physical strength or something like that? So what's going on as far as health is concerned? And so this process is constantly running. We are always evaluating the world around us to determine, are we at a personal level as safe, as secure, as happy, and as healthy as we want to be? As we look at the world around us, if we realize that we are not as safe, as secure, as happy, or as healthy as we want to be, there's something about our nature that compels us to move to step number two, and that's to implement a change. So nature is doing her job to kind of keep us focused on these issues that are presenting themselves. So if we feel unsafe, insecure, unhappy, unhealthy, nature says, well, then you need to do something. You need to do something that will result in you being safe, secure, happy, and healthy yet again. And so nature tells us, make some sort of a change. And then we move on to step three. We assess the result. Did it work? Did it make us more safe, secure, happy, healthy? If it did, then nature says, okay, you're done. Move on to whatever's next on your day. But if it didn't produce the result we were looking for, then nature tells us we are still unsafe, insecure, unhappy, or unhealthy, and we need to do something else. We need to change, something. We need to try something different, and then we'll assess that result. So this change process is something that's very much a part of human nature, and it's there to save us. I mean, this whole safety one is up front for a reason. So we've got to be gathering this information so that we can determine, is there a threat in our environment? But since we've got this process, it ends up getting applied to other things as well. Now, we could talk about this in grand detail for as long as anyone wants, but I just want to see if you understand it. How many of you right now have a change in mind that you believe you would benefit in making? So how many of you have got some sort of goal that you've set, some sort of objective that you've put in place, some sort of change that you believe you should be making for whatever reasons? So this is it. So I was going like, yep, people have got their you've got your changes. So this is it. Now I like it. T is on the call. T Wallman was sharing that cleaning the office is on her. So this is a change. All right. So we know all this. Now, can you tell me what part of your life this is affecting? Is this change that you want to make about enhancing your personal safety? Is it about boosting your sense of security? Is it about making you happier? Or is it about boosting your sense of health? Is this change that you are contemplating about safety, security, happiness, health, or some combination of those? So, what is it that's really going on? Now, Tia is sharing here that it's yes to all of them. Now, I don't know if she's about cleaning the office. So, when we're talking about safety, we're talking about your actual physical safety. So, hopefully, there's nothing in the office that's ready to fall on top of you or producing noxious fumes. But you can look at any particular change and go like, no, there are aspects of it that do enhance my sense of security, and that alone liberates some of my energy to feel more positively about myself and about my life, and allows me to take some time and go and do something I really enjoy doing, and that boosts my psychological health, and maybe I actually decide to do something that makes me happy and is healthy for me to actually do. And so, yep, you guys are sharing some great one, right? Income increase, increased engagement. Yeah, and so these are all probably about boosting that sense of security, happy, etc. Oh, T is sharing notes about tripping over things. Then it's time to clean the office. All right, so again, I just want you guys to really recognize that at the heart of this program, Mastering Personal Change, it's all about understanding and respecting the role that nature plays in that change equation. Nature is already part of you, and she is always going to be there to get you to look at the situations around you and do what needs to be done so that you can move forward on whatever path that happens to be. So we want you to kind of recognize that change is a very natural process that we follow. Okay, so now let's take it a step further. So we can also say that change is the heart of every relationship. And we can apply this at all levels. So it's because humans are basically influential by nature. As we're each born, we pop out of the womb very influential. We can't do all that much, but we can cry, and we can cry loudly. And so we're already trying to influence people to turn up the heat or turn down the light, or do something to make me feel that I'm no longer unsafe and unhappy. So, we're influential by nature. We're always trying to get other people to do things, and they're in turn trying to get us to do things. And so we can take a look at this and see the evidence of it. Everyone wants you to change. If you think about it, since you were a child, literally everyone you've come in contact with in any meaningful sort of way has wanted you to change. And you can look at the list here to get some indications of who those are. So certainly your parents, teachers, any early level role model that you would have known, but everyone you've ever dated, the person you married, so your children, your friends, the Surgeon General, I mean, the government, competitors, no matter who you look at, people want you to change. Now, they're not trying to take grand control over your life and say, you're going to do what I tell you, you're going to make the. No, they basically are going like, hey, I've got this idea, I've got this suggestion, I've got this opinion, I've got this insight that I think would be really good for you to share because I think it could affect your life as well. And that's kind of the same spirit that you have because you also want everyone to change too. And it's often the exact same people that are trying to change you. And so you are trying to influence, your children, your spouse, your friends, your colleagues, anyone that you're out there trying to interact with. So this whole idea about change being part of the whole human relationship is just, an easy thing to see, part of our routine conversations we have, even with our closest friends, are involved about changing. So, for example, weekends coming up, we don't have any weekend plans. We contacted our closest friends in town and said, "Hey, what are you guys doing? Do you want to do something this weekend?" And so we're now at that stage where we're starting to make some suggestions about what we could do. And so there's this element of influence that's happening even at this very casual, uh, you know, uh, situation of setting up something to do for the weekend. So now, what's most important though for this program isn't about how you go about responding to the changes that people are trying to impose upon you, or how you go about promoting changes that you believe others should make. We got other programs to talk about that in detail. What we want to talk about for this program is the fact that you want you to change. And for some reason, my little slide isn't showing there. So let me just go ahead and show this up because I think it's got a really great little sign here for you. So there we go. All right, so you want yourself to change as well. And let's think about the things that you may want to be changing about you. Maybe you want to change whatever your goals are that you're working on. Your goals, short-term goals. Maybe it's a grand goal, something that's really impacting your life at a far greater level. But what are your goals? When you set a goal, what you're saying is, I want me to change. When you are thinking about what do you want to do about your career, what do you want to do about your physical health, your financial situation, your lifestyle, all these things, whether it's something as simple as changing the car that you drive or something much more challenging like changing your habits. These are all changes. These are all ways that you want yourself to change. So look at the things I put here: your personal growth, your appearance, your future, your legacy, your confidence, your happiness, and there's countless others that didn't make the little short list here. This is what we really want to explore in mastering personal change. What are the changes that you want to be making for yourself? And what is happening about your progress in making those changes? So, how many of you right now have specific changes that you want to make about yourself? And it's great. As T shared, there's a change to her environment. I don't know if I put that one on the, yeah, your surroundings. So, about cleaning the office or whatever. But as you look at this list, how many of you see lots of ways that you would like yourself to be changing as well? Yeah. So we've got lots and lots of things here to be looking at. Now, let's take it a little step further then. So you've got these changes that you want yourself to be making, but you still are out there working for a living. And so we want to put our energy about how you go about mastering personal change. But I do want you to recognize that everything that you're learning in this program can be easily transferred to the work that you are doing on, literally on the job, or the work that you're doing with your own friends and family members, and those kinds of relationships. And so whether you're looking at your role as a professional of whatever sort you may be, or you're just looking at your role as a parent or as a friend or as a spouse, everyone is a change agent. Through our efforts, other people are enabled to make some sort of change that without us they would find difficult, if not impossible. And so you can take all these principles and very easily apply them in relationships to others. My concern, though, is we put so much emphasis on how we go about being more influential with others. And that kind of application of this outside of ourselves, that we forget that all of this information is vitally important to our personal success when it comes to reaching the kinds of goals and making the kinds of changes that we all want to be making at that personal level. So let's see. Yeah, there is a raise your hand option there, Joe, but because the list is much longer of people than the window, I can't see when a hand goes up. And so the easiest thing to do is just type me a little note here in the question panel, and I'm more than happy to unmute you and let you do that. So if you want me to unmute, just say, "Hey, unmute me. I got a question," or whatever. Yep, and yeah, thanks so much, Bob, for sharing the areas that you're looking at. So, yeah, financial goals, relationship, lots of things that we all want to be changing. And I want you to really focus on that before you start to think about how this applies to others. All right, so now everyone's a change agent. Now, you think about this. If it's true that we all have a lifetime of changes we want to make for ourselves, what is it that is at the heart of this resistance? You know, on the one hand, we're saying, "I want to make this change," and in the next moment, our behavior seems to say otherwise. So, I've asked you guys how many of you have got goals that you want to be working on, and you've all said, "Oh, yes, I've got plenty of those." How many of you have not followed through and done the things that need to be done, even though you're fully aware of what needs to be done and you're fully aware of the benefit that waits for you when you get it all done? How many of you have not followed through and accomplished the goals that you've set for yourself, whether it's recent or long term? I mean, how many of you end up resisting making the changes that you yourself have decided you want to do? Yep. And so some of them we end up following through on, others we don't. So what's going on? What's going on? So if we're not resistant to change itself, then where is this resistance coming from? Particularly when these are changes that we have personally chosen. Well, to get to the answer to that, you have to answer this question. What does someone really want as a result of making a change? So when you think about these changes that you are wanting to make in your life, why? What do you really want as the result of making that change? Now, you can go back and say, well, because it's going to make me more safe, secure, happy, or healthy. And that's probably an accurate answer. But what's the motivator? Why are you trying to do this? What are you really looking for as you go about following through and making a change? Now, the answer to this question is one word, and that word is control. We change in order to gain or maintain control over some area of our life. Now, when I'm using the word control, I'm not talking about trying to, conquer the world. It's not about controlling other people. It's not about controlling or dominating or coercing or manipulating somebody else into doing something. It's not about that. It's about bringing your life into control as you define that, bringing your life into balance, into harmony, bringing your life into whatever state it is that you want most. So when I think of the word control, I'm thinking about it more like the way a thermostat controls the temperature of a room. It's about making adjustments that make my world the way that I want it to be. So I want to make sure that I'm the one that's safe. I'm happy. I'm secure. I'm healthy. I want to make sure that I'm the one who is gaining control over whatever that area of my life happens to be. So people change then in order to gain or maintain control. And you can look at all the changes you have in mind. Let me just scroll this for a second. Yeah. Move towards pleasure and away from pain. Yeah, yeah. For in healthy, adjusted people, that's certainly true. Yep. Okay, good, 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 good. All right. So now look at this statement and then think about the changes that you are considering making. People change in order to gain or maintain control. So as you think about each of the changes you're considering, just ask yourself, is the reason why I want to make this change because I believe it's going to somehow or another enhance my sense of control? It's going to help me gain a greater level of control over whatever area of my life I happen to be looking at. Is that the motivator? You're doing it to gain control. Or are you making this change in order to maintain the control that you already have? So maybe you need to make some adjustments just to keep things the way that they are so you can maintain whatever that livelihood happens to be, or that lifestyle happens to be, or that whatever happens to be. So when you look at each one of the changes, you've got to answer this question. Are you doing this in order to gain control or maintain control? If you feel that you will gain or maintain control, you are likely to put some energy into making this change happen. But let's just look at the only alternative left. If you don't feel like you're going to gain control or maintain control, what would you feel? So you're looking at a situation and going like, I don't think I'm going to gain a greater level of control if I follow through and do this. And I don't even think it's going to help me maintain control over what I'm currently doing. In fact, I'm quite concerned that if I make this change, something else is going to happen. And what could that be? And that could be that we would actually feel like we are, that's the right answer. If people are typing me answers, thank you, are actually losing control. Now, think about this. If you felt that by making a change, you would actually lose control over some aspect of your life, are you likely to do that change or resist doing that change? Well, the obvious answer is that I'm likely to resist that. And so, as we look at this, you're going to find out that people really aren't resistant to change itself. They're resistant to losing control. And even if you look at your own behavior and your own progress towards your goals, you need to recognize that if you are hesitating to move forward, it's because something about this whole control equation doesn't feel right to you. You're not convinced that you're going to gain enough control to offset whatever the loss of control is you're going to experience. Obviously, there's always an exchange of control. If you want to have more education, which will give you a greater sense of control, you might have to give up your control over X amount of dollars so that you can then pay for that education. So there's often an exchange of control. If you want, for example, this is I think a good example for personal change. If you want to have all the wonderful things that marriage can bring you, you're going to have to give up some of the things that being single brings you. So no longer is there only stuff in the refrigerator that you like to eat, and so there's always this exchange of control that's going to be taking place. If you don't think you're going to gain control, or certainly gain enough control to offset what you're spending to get that control, you're going to resist it. If you don't think it's even going to help you maintain control, or it's just not worth the investment because the protection it brings you isn't really warranted, then you're going to resist that. And certainly, if you believe that by making the change you're going to lose control over something really that you care about, then you're going to get resistance. So we want to understand, if you feel resistant to making this change, or you are resisting devoting your energy to making this change happen, well, then what's going on with you? Do you really believe you'll gain control, or do you believe you're going to lose control? Well, let's explore that to find out what it is that is in your way, and see if we can help you to overcome that, or get around it, or eliminate it. And while I'm talking about that, let me say that for those of you that are actually working with a coach or a counselor, any sort of a human development professional, there's no reason why you still can't do your own personal exploration, and then use the awareness that you get from creating and exploring your change grid to engage that human development professional at a higher level, so it can help you get more benefit out of the time that you are spending with the coach or the counselor, the therapist or the trainer, the whoever role they happen to be in. So take some responsibility to better understand yourself, and you'll be better equipped to get the most out of whatever those relationships happen to be. All right, so now people won't change, they're already in control. If you really feel that something in your life is exactly the way that you want it to be and the way you've always wanted it to be, then the likelihood that you're going to change is really pretty remote. Why? But because change always involves an element of risk. And unless you are convinced that you are going to gain or maintain control, you might ask yourself, do I really want to take that risk? Do I want to take the control I have and put it into jeopardy? And so, if you really feel that you are in control and you see no way that that change is going to help you to gain more control or hang on to the control you have, you're going to resist it. And when we encounter that kind of resistance, I think we've encountered intelligence. This is your cognitive abilities and your intuition saying to you, this is not something that is really a good use of your time, your resources, your energy, your efforts, etc. So, this is where like people will not change if they're already in control. Now that means that in order for someone to change, they have to feel like they need more control. And so the only thing anyone really wants as a result of making that change, or buys in the case of being a consumer, is control. That's what we all want. And likewise, if we're trying to support someone else, then the only thing that we really offer them is control as well. And this, again, plays out in our relationships, whether we're looking at being a parent or a spouse or a friend or a colleague, a coworker, whatever it is. So it's all about an exchange of that control. But in order for people to change, then they must feel three words. Those three words are out of control. Now, I read long ago, can't remember who to attribute the quote to, but the writer said that change occurs when your mind says enough. So whatever the situation is, you're going to reach a certain point where you go like, I can't tolerate this anymore. I can't keep continuing the way that I am. I need to change. I need to change now. It's when your head says enough already. This is when we draw that line. This is when the change occurs. So another way to look at that is that at a certain point, we recognize we are out of control. And once we have that, once we feel that reality of being out of control exists, now we can really put our energy into something. Now, by out of control, I don't mean that you're on the edge of a cliff ready to fall to an untimely demise. I just mean that as you look at your situation, you go, things are not as they could be, should be, ought to be. Things are not the way I want them to be. Um, and I can't continue on this path. I can see where this is going to end up, and I don't like where it's going to end up. So, enough already. Something needs to change. I feel that the situation is out of control, and I want to get back in control. So, in order for people to change, they must feel out of control. Now, I'm going to demonstrate this for you in a very real way in just a couple of minutes so that you guys can really connect to this. But again, I don't think you can master personal change until you really understand that it's not so much about change. It really is more about control than anything else. So the more out of control you feel, the more valuable the solution becomes. So think about that. If you think about any situation going on in your life, and it only troubles you a little bit, it's just a bothersome sort of thing. It's just something that's pestering you a little bit. Well, you don't feel all that out of control, and so the value of the solution isn't really all that great. On the other hand, if that situation is something that you find very troubling, very problematic, then a solution to it you're going to will be viewed by you as being far more valuable. So the more out of control you feel, the more valuable a solution becomes. An easy way to illustrate this is with this question: how much money are you willing to spend for a bottle of water? And the answer is depends on how thirsty you are. So this is what it's all about. The thirstier and thirstier I get, the more valuable that bottle of water becomes. But if I've just quenched my thirst and you want to offer me a bottle of water, it's like, thanks, but no thanks. I wouldn't even take it for free. So you see this working out for you. Now, people then, as I said earlier, are not really resistant to change. They're resistant to losing control. And so the first big lesson in mastering personal change is a lesson about awareness. Whenever you feel yourself holding back in progressing towards your goal, whenever you feel yourself coming up with excuses, ways to justify whatever your alternative behavior is, you need to go, all right, I'm not resistant to the change itself. I'm resistant to losing control. So, in what way do I think I'm actually going to lose control if I follow through with this change? Now, when you allow yourself to explore the answer to that question, you may discover one of two things. One, that there are legitimate reasons why you should not proceed yet or proceed ever. And the second question is that you may realize there is no justifiable reason why you shouldn't proceed now or proceed ever. You need to get moving on this. And so by doing this, we're either going to come up with like, yes, there are legitimate reasons, or you know what, there's not. And so I need to just kind of move forward. I need to make myself do what needs to be done. We'll get into discussions about how to make that happen very easily. as this training continues. And so, again, awareness is the first step on the road to recovery. So, how many of you have ever felt yourself holding back from doing the things that need to be done in order for you to reach the goals you have in mind? How many of you have been fully aware that a change needs to occur, and at the same moment hesitant or reluctant or just lazy about doing the stuff that needs to be done? So weigh in with me on this. I'm very curious to know how you guys are responding to this. So yeah, this is a really, really common sort of a thing. What's going on? Nothing's stopping you from moving forward. What's really in the way? What's really in the way? And so this is what we want you to be looking at. A couple of you are suggesting, well, maybe you're just afraid of what would happen. We'll talk about where fear lives on the change grid, and then we're going to see, is fear really what's stopping you from getting to where you want to go? Or is it the opposite? Perhaps it's apathy that's interfering with your progress. But here's the truth, though. We're not resistant to change. We are resistant to losing control. So whenever you are feeling that you are resisting something, you must ask yourself, in what way do I think I'm actually going to lose control as a result of making this change? Explore that and see what it is that you discover because of it. And again, those of you working with coaches, um, or other human development professionals, you can certainly work with them and explore this with them about, why am I holding back? What is really in my belief system that is affecting my behavior moving forward? Got a comment here from Franz. Change always happens internally first before it manifests itself externally. I certainly agree. When it comes to something that we are making a personal choice around, it begins as an internal process. It begins as a decision that we make. It's really now about, is this decision going to translate into action that will ultimately take me to the outcome I'm looking for? So I think there's a lot of people that get to that point internally of making the decision, but then translating it into action and following through on that action plan. That's where things start to stumble, because something's happening to their balance of control. And maybe it's something as simple as making a particular change will require a great deal of time. And while you really want the change, when you start to do the process, you go like, oh, I don't have this time, or, oh, I need to carve out more time before I start this, or I need to get something out of the way so that then I'll have time to work with it. So you might be feeling that you're losing control over time, and that all by itself can be enough to stop you from putting the energy into the changes that you really want to make. One of the other programs that we offer to the ChangeWorks community members who are community builders is called The Accountable Self, Becoming a Finisher in a World of Starters. It has another subtitle too, Conquering the 80% Existence. This program is really all about what it is that you have to do to get yourself to finish the things that you begin. So this idea about becoming a finisher in a world of starters, or are settling for 80% of the success that you could have. So how often do people get most of the way to most of their goals most of the time? But do they ever get all the way to their goal and do this consistently and predictably? And so there's a way of looking at this, about this accountable self kind of a focus. So this is what we're really talking about. What is going on with this feeling of being in or out of control, and why is that damaging your ability to move forward? Now, let's take this a step further here. So that's all there is to it. I mean, let's really think about that. I want you guys to weigh on this. Is really that it? That the reason why you haven't changed is because you really don't feel out of control, or you feel like you'd lose control over something else, and it's just too big of a price to be paid? Is that it? I mean, do we really think that the moment you are aware that you're out of control of something, you'll immediately jump on and start doing the things that need to be done? Obviously, that's not the way that it works. Or every time you felt out of control, you would devote all of your energy into getting back in control and stick with it until you got there. But that's not what happens in routine life. There's something else that's going on. So again, if I was working with you guys privately, I'd be saying, how many of you right now, what changes are on your plate that you have not taken all the way through to completion, that could have been taken to completion? Or what kinds of goals and aspirations have you had that have been lingering, not just in recent days, days, but in recent years, maybe even decades, that you've been thinking about making a particular change, but it's never come through. What's going on? And so, to answer that question, I want you to kind of think about this situation. What is it that actually interferes with us taking the results of this problem solving cognitive kind of processing of our situation? What is it that stops us from translating that into action? And this is where we really want to get to it now. Um, the answer is that change would be very effortless for people to make if we lived in a fully functional world. Because the moment you realize you were out of control, you would seek out a way to get back in control, and you would do whatever it is that makes it all happen. That's how life would operate if we were all fully functional. Unfortunately, we don't live in a functional world. We live in a dysfunctional world. We live in a world filled with people, ourselves included, that are fully aware of changes that need to be made in our lives, fully aware of that we have all the resources necessary to make manifest anything we really want. Um, but we don't put those two things together and follow through on it. Something gets in our way, something distracts us. Now, while we might be getting distracted from a lot of the goals, the truth is we are still accomplishing others. So, in spite of the fact that we may not be progressing on goal A or B, we could still be taking care of goal C or D. What's the difference between A, B, C, and D? Why are some of these goals actually happening? Why do we do the final steps on a lot of things and hold back on others? What's going on? Well, there is this other ingredient that becomes mandatory for this. Oh, wait just a second, get some comments here. Daniel is sharing. Is it possible that taking control can feel like losing control, especially when it involves not doing what you are accustomed to doing that presents the illusion of control? Oh, Daniel, there's a lot crammed into that statement. Is it possible that taking control can feel like losing control? I do believe that as I take control of issue A, I may have to relinquish control over issue B. So there is an exchange of control that's going to happen more often than not. Although I can probably think of some examples where I can gain control without having to spend any energy, any time, any whatever, the majority of the changes we're all considering are going to require us to make a choice. And that choice is that rather than putting our resources into, XYZ, we're instead going to put those resources into ABC. And that means we're going to have to give up something in order to have something. So that's all part of it. Especially when it involves not doing what you're accustomed to. Okay, so breaking a normal pattern to doing that presents the illusion of control. I don't know that it would necessarily present an illusion of control. Hmm. Okay, but there's something there. Let's see. Bob's got a comment here. How bad does it have to hurt before you change? That gets back to when do we say enough? Good observation. So, all right, let's take a look at this then. So, even though we all may be in this dysfunctional state where we don't always follow through and do exactly what needs to be done and do it sooner rather than later, we just accept that as part of it. We still get around to doing a great deal of things. So, what is it then that determines what changes we're going to focus on and when those changes are going to occur? And now we get to the big answer that we've always focused on, and that is what really prompts humans to change is the level of tension they're experiencing, the level of tension. Now, tension has a lot of different meanings in the dictionary. The one that I want you to focus on is this. Tension can be defined as the level of physical, emotional, and intellectual activity a person's experiencing at any given moment in time. Usually, when people think of tension, they tend to think about physical tension. So they talk about having headaches or things that are causing their whole their brow to furrow, or their pulse rate to go up. They think that tension is something that's purely physical, but tension also certainly has an emotional element to it. So as we start to feel emotions like anger and fear and things like that, our level of tension is definitely going to go up. And certainly intellectual activities, we go about trying to process a situation, do some problem solving. If we can't come up with a great solution right away, okay, that's going to cause us a little bit of discomfort as well. So We say that the three elements that are contributing to the level of tension you're experiencing are physical elements, emotional elements, intellectual elements. So you add up what's going on, blend it all together, you end up with a certain level of tension. Obviously, we're the Institute for Productive Tension, so we've been studying this subject for 30 plus years now. We believe that at the heart of every element of human behavior is this idea about tension. In fact, we can say a couple things about tension to help lock this home. Again, we define it physical, emotional, intellectual activity. How would you describe someone who's experiencing zero physical, zero emotional, and zero intellectual activity? Someone who has no tension whatsoever? We would describe that person, again, someone weigh in here, type me an answer. How would you describe someone who's experiencing zero physical, zero emotional, and zero intellectual activity? They are They're dead. Yep, they're a corpse. They're clinically dead. Nothing we can do around that. If we go to the other extreme, if you describe someone who's experiencing an extremely high level of physical, emotional, and intellectual activity, what word would we use to describe that? Obviously, they've got a lot of tension. What word would describe someone who's experiencing just an oppressive level of physical, emotional, and intellectual activity? What's going on with them? All right, now this is where we're getting into. You guys are talking about stress or distress. Stress also can have a positive label to it if we get into the psychology of things with eustress and distress. But stress is what someone from the lay public would say that person's experiencing. So physical, emotional, intellectual activity. Another way to look at tension, though, is with this definition. It is the crucial ingredient that determines what changes will be made and when those changes will take place. And so we want people to recognize that if there is no tension, I'm not going to pay any attention to whatever the situation happens to be. Obviously, if there's zero tension, I can't, I'm dead. But if a situation only stimulates teeny tiny little amounts of tension, well, don't expect it to get any attention. But the more tension that situation causes me, the more and more of my attention it's going to demand. And so, if we need to make a change occur, we have to ask ourselves, how much tension is it going to take for me to actually follow through and do what needs to be done? If that tension isn't there, the likelihood of the task being done falls dramatically. So make it simple. People pay attention to where they find their tension, and the opposite is true as well. We don't pay attention to things that don't cause us any tension. In the absence of tension, there is no productivity. Again, the person's clinically dead. We don't expect them to be very, very productive. Or to put it in more of a graphic form, there is a relationship between tension and productivity, and it's shown by the curve you see on the screen right now. So everyone kind of look at the screen for a second. I can tell who's looking at my screen. So everyone take a peek at it so you get this diagram. Thanks so much. Okay. So this graphic shows the relationship between tension and productivity. As the person's level of tension increases, we find a corresponding boost in their level of productivity. So a little bit more tension will make me a little bit more productive. Even more tension, even more productive. Even more tension, even more productive. But there comes a point in time where the level of tension becomes too much. And when we get to that stress point, what happens to our productivity when we become stressed? So tell me, what happens to productivity when we become stressed? So this is when becomes Tia sharing here. It's when people become wild, crazy. They feel overwhelmed, and so we find that the level of productivity is going to take a nosedive. Now, keep in mind there is a difference between activity and productivity. Someone who's in stress is very, very active, emotionally and intellectually, even physically. Lots of stuff is going on, but unfortunately, all that activity isn't being channeled and managed and directed in a way that produces the result. And so it's a lot of chaotic kind of energy and activity, but don't call that productivity. Now, if you look at this curve, though, you can see that somewhere along it there is a level of tension that equals maximum productivity. So where is that? Where is it that someone is likely to really do exactly what needs to be done and do it right then and there? Well, that's at the top of this curve. We call that area the threshold of activation. The threshold of activation is the level of tension at which someone will take immediate, definitive action. The threshold of activation is a very real thing that all of us experience multiple times every single day. And I'll give you one example of this that I promise you you'll never forget. But you wake up in the middle of the night and you think, I need to go to the bathroom. Do you immediately jump out of bed and go to the bathroom? No, like most people, you lay there and the negotiation, the debate begins. How badly do I need to go? How cold is the floor? How long is it before I have to get out of bed anyway? And so you kind of go through this processing, and maybe you say like, oh, now I'm just going to go back to sleep. So you go back to sleep. 30 minutes later, you wake up and you go like, no, I really have to pee, and so you finally get out of bed and you go to do it. At that moment, you hit your threshold of activation. You hit a level of tension that you found sufficient to prompt you to take action. You finally found your current situation disturbing enough to bother doing something definitive to change it. And so this is where we get to the real truth about why you haven't followed through and done those things that really you've chosen to do, or that you said at least on the surface you wanted to do. The truth be told, you do not find your current situation troublesome enough to bother doing anything definitive to change it. You might find your situation troublesome enough to complain about it. So a little bit of tension can make me grumble about things. So a little bit more tension can make me say, well, and I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to look at some options. A little bit more tension, say, I'm not going to look at the options. I'm going to go out there and test a few of these out. Or I'm even going to make one. I'm going to choose what I'm going to do. And so as your level of tension gets higher and higher, the productivity gets higher and higher as well. So it may be that the reason why you haven't followed through to do what's necessary to reach whatever these goals happen to be is because in your heart's truth, you really don't find your current situation troublesome enough to bother doing anything definitive to change it once and for all. The other possibility is that depending on what the change is, you might have had a great deal of tension at the beginning of it, and you started to do the things that were necessary to make this change happen. But as you got closer and closer to reaching the ultimate goal, you got to experience some of the benefit of incremental goals and found that benefit pleasant enough that you no longer cared about the ultimate outcome as much as you did initially. Let me give you an example of this to demonstrate for it. A very common thing that people want to change about themselves is their weight. And so let's say you go like, I'm going to set a goal. I want to lose 20 pounds in the next 3 months. 20 pounds in 3 months' time. Now, if you run the math, that's a very realistic expectation. That's not even 2 pounds a week. So a pound and a half a week, that's something that most people would be able to do. So you could lose that 20 pounds inside of 3 months' time. So you go like, yeah, this is really something I can do, and so you start doing it, and you're watching your diet, and you're exercising more, and lo and behold, you're losing weight. Well, as you lose weight, your feeling about yourself starts to improve, and you start to look in the mirror, and kind of go like, I'm looking pretty good. I'm looking pretty good. So how many people are actually going to continue till they lose the 20? Or when they get to 15, they kind of go like, no, I'm really well on my track. Maybe I can step off my plan for a while. Maybe I can eat something that's not on the program, or maybe I can skip, a couple of weeks worth of the workouts that happen to be. So, yep. Right. Okay. Daniel's got a great example about tension management. He's in the LA area. He says, "So I woke up at 6:30 a.m. to the to a house shaking earthquake, but I pulled the pillow over my head because it wasn't big enough to stimulate any other action." So, yeah. So this is it. It was disturbing enough to get you to wake up and put a pillow over your head, but you assessed the situation, decided it really wasn't that threatening, and so didn't do anything else. But if there's an aftershock, aftershock, and the aftershock is a real rumbler. This could take people way up to that threshold of activation. Or I'm going to imagine that a lot of the people who experienced the earthquake said, all right, usually there's going to be aftershock. So maybe they started looking at things they really cared about on the shelves and said, maybe I need to scoot these back from the disc, from the edge, or maybe put some things in a safer place, or maybe we need to get the kids and put them through a little earthquake drill kind of a situation. So, it might have moved some people up to a different kind of a threshold, but for you, it was nothing more than putting the pillow over your head. Okay, so let's take a look at this in just a little bit more detail to see what's going on. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to really understand how vital this level of tension really is. So I'm going to put you guys in a series of scenarios, and I just want you to tell me, do you think you would make the change? So in the first scenario, the change you are thinking about making is one that you go is completely and totally logical. The change makes sense. It'll give you what you want. It'll help you get in control. It'll make you more safe, secure, happier, healthy. All that logic stuff has been satisfied. So it makes sense. The second variable we'll look at is feasibility. All change requires the availability of certain resources. So different changes need different resources, but like I said earlier, it's a pretty rare change that requires no resources whatsoever, no exchange of control. So we've got to ask a question of feasibility. Do I have the resources that are necessary to make this change occur, or am I willing to make these resources available? So in this case, you're saying like, oh no, I got the resources and I can do with them whatever I really want. So I've made the I've made my peace about the resource exchange. So it's totally logical, it's totally feasible, and you've got enough tension that you've said, I can't put up with this anymore. Enough already. You're at your threshold of activation. So what's the likelihood that you will follow through and do what needs to be done? You've got all the logic, you got all the feasibility, and your tension is at that threshold. The answer is, oh, this one you're definitely going to do. Let's look at the next situation. In this situation, you say, it's not the perfect solution. It's got a lot of positives to it. It could work, but it's not perfect. It's not exactly the way that I wish it was. I wish I could change this about it. I wish I could change that about it. But you know what? It is what it is. And so, although the logic isn't really perfect, it's close enough that it could still help me. So, well, that's the situation. I've got all the resources that I need, and I know I need to do something. What's the likelihood that I am going to follow through and put in place a solution that is not perfect in every single way? So, is this likely to happen or not happen? And again, you can look at your own life to see evidence of this. Have you ever decided to follow through on on an action that was not perfect in your way you had hoped to find, but it met enough of the requirements that there was a greater reason to do it than not to do it? So, how many of you have ever settled on second best because your best one couldn't really be easily found? Yep. Okay, so you guys have experienced what I'm talking about here. Okay, great, great, great. Yeah. So now, so what's the likelihood of this happening? Oh, yeah, it's got a strong chance of occurring. Certainly not as strong as the first scenario, but nevertheless, this is normal everyday living. Rarely in our role as a consumer do we go out and find exactly what we were hoping to find. We just go shopping around and we look at the relative merits of each of the different products or solutions we could find, and we make our choice. But how often is it actually perfect in every way? So that's that scenario. The next scenario, though, the person says to you, "Oh," or you say to yourself, "It's completely and totally logical. It makes total sense for me to do this, but you know what? I really don't have those resources. I don't really have that time. I really don't have that money. But you know what? I got this tension. It really is troubling me that I'm not doing something." So the logic is there and the tension is there, but the feasibility isn't. What would you do in this particular situation? Is this have we reached an impasse? Or what might someone do when they're in a situation that makes sense for them to do it and their level of tension says, do this now? You're at the threshold of activation. You've said enough. Something must change. What do we do? Do we give up? No. The answer is this is where there's a will, there's a way. So, how many of you have ever been in a situation where you said, yes, this is logical. I need to do this. And yeah, the tension, there's pressure. I need to do this now, but I don't have all that time. I don't have all that money. What could I do? Now, when it comes to money, it's because of this line item that the credit industry was born. So, the whole point of credit cards and other forms of credit is to make the presently unfeasible feasible. So, it's something that can be managed. So, you might need to rearrange some resources. You might need to call in a favor. You might need to dip into some sort of savings that you said you wouldn't otherwise touch. But whatever that resource is that you need, it's amazing how we are able to find what's necessary when we're in a situation we go, I really need to do this. It's logical. And I can't keep on the path I'm on right now. Enough already. It has to change. It has to change now. So whenever we're in this situation, the answer is, yeah, this can actually occur. Now, it's going to be a bit more difficult than the line item before because it's easier to get over an issue of logic than it is to get over an issue of feasibility. But it's still got a good chance of doing it. So, again, checking with all of you guys, how many of you, in fact, right now, yep, um, yep. Okay. Thanks, Joe, for that information. So this is what we really want you guys to really recognize that just because you don't think you have the resources, that's not an impasse. It's amazing how often we find the resources necessary to accomplish the things that we want to accomplish most in life. Now, the next scenario, the person says to themselves, it really isn't logical. So it's got this problem, it's got that problem. I mean, I like a couple things about it, but it's not perfect. And as far as feasibility goes, they go like, and I really don't have the money. But you know what? I love. I'm excited. I'm thrilled. I'm captivated. I'm up there. I'm energized. I'm at that threshold. Let's get going. Let's get going. Let's get going. So instead of the threshold feeling like a place of negative emotion, the threshold can also be a place of excitement, on the edge, the brink of a thrilling kind of an experience. So what happens when we're in a situation where we go like, it may not really make sense when I look at the logic, and it may really not be feasible when I look at the resources, but you know what? I'm in it to win it. I'm excited. I'm dead. I'm ready to go. How often do we make changes in this case? The answer is we still do this. This is impulsive decision making. This is impulse buying. This is when we say, rather than look at the logic of a situation and look at the feasibility, I'm just going to go with my gut, and my gut is saying we do this now. And so we make a lot of impulsive decisions that take us into actions that in retrospect may not have really been logical or feasible and can cause us other trouble. So, how many of you have ever found yourself in this kind of a situation where you just got so enthusiastic, so passionate about something, you jumped in, and in spite of the logic saying, wait a second, and in spite of feasibility saying, wait a second, the tension said, we're going now. And so, again, this happens all the time. But now look at this last scenario. In this situation, you go, oh no, it's completely and totally logical. There's no argument about that. I would definitely gain control by doing whatever it is. And I do have all the resources that are necessary. I've got all the money. I've got all the time. I've got all the authority. I've got everything that I need to do this. And again, the logic is there. I know it'd end up really good. But you know what? Right now, there's just other things happening. Like today's a gloomy day. And so I got to go take care of this. Or, oh, this is going on. Or so and so's in town. And, we basically say the truth is, as logical as it may be and as feasible as it may be, I just don't have enough tension to do what needs to be done about this. And so, what do we predict will happen? Is the person likely to follow through and do those things, or are they likely to delay, yet another day? So, will the change occur when the tension is not present? The answer here is no, it won't. And so, what I'm going to have you guys do during this Mastering Personal Change course is start to ask yourself, what is really in my way? Is the reason why I'm not moving forward on something because it's so illogical, it just doesn't make any sense to do whatsoever? Is that what's in the way? So I got to work with improving the logic. Is it about feasibility that I don't have the resources and I can't come up with some way to do? Is that really what's stopping you from getting to where you want to go? Or is the truth be told, you don't find the situation troublesome enough to get your attention to it today? So you don't have enough attention to pay attention to it now. So, what we're concerned about as we look at programs that are about personal growth and development, we're concerned that people are going to put all their time and energy into trying to turn logic into yes, or put all their time and energy into trying to turn feasibility into yes. When the truth is that, regardless of how logical it may be for you to make the change, and regardless of how feasible it may be for you to make the change, you still may not follow through because you don't have enough tension to pay attention to it and follow through and do what needs to be done. So, we believe that the most important skill for you to develop if you want to master personal change is to have this ability to monitor and manage your own level of productive tension. Yeah, logic will help and feasibility will help, but they're not going to be what will make or break your success. Your success in your life has been based not so much on your ability to make things that are unfeasible feasible, or to make things illogical logical. Your success is based on your natural or learned ability to monitor and manage tension. And certainly this applies to you as an individual. This also applies to the success that you experience in your role as a parent, or as a spouse, as a family member, as a friend. Your success in that endeavor is based on your natural or learned ability to monitor and manage your own level of tension, and to take it to the next step, to monitor and manage the tension of those that are around you. So people that are truly happy and healthy and safe and secure, they have been able to monitor and manage their tension so successfully that they are at peaks, at least in that moment. And so this is what this is really all about. Let's stop putting so much energy into trying to figure out the logic of it, the how of it. Let's stop trying to put so much energy into figuring out the what part, what's required. We want to focus our energy on that level of tension, the why part of it. Why is it something that needs to be done and needs to be done now? And as we translate that into some very specific things, you're going to find that your ability to make the changes you want happen sooner than later is going to be tied to this tension management element.